So we're going to work on a poetry zine today. Before we start, let me talk about some supplies that you might find very useful to work with. So I've got a ruler, something metal with a sharp edge to it is really helpful. Scissors, an X-Acto knife, something like a bone tool or some kind of hard edge that you can use to fold kind of thick pieces of paper. And different kinds of pencils, pens. I've got these waterproof pens from Stettler that are really nice. They're waterproof so that you can work on this and then do kind of watercolor washes on top and then the line won't smudge. I've got this pencil from Faber-Castell, which is a water-soluble pencil. So these are really nice to add a little bit of texture. So you can do like really sketchy graphite lines and at the same time kind of put like a water wash over them and see how they kind of melt away. So different kind of pencils. I've got white charcoal. You could do color pencils, oil pastels, watercolor, all kinds of color medium as well. I'm kind of keeping it simple and going black and white today. And then you want something to collage with. So I've got lots of different materials here. I've got this kind of tracing paper, wrapping paper, kind of tissue paper. I love to work with sheer things because it's really nice to add layers to my work. So I love working with sheer materials. I've got newspaper clippings. So this is like some clipping from a Japanese newspaper. I've got lots more little newspaper clippings. The theme that I'm working with today is kind of about journey. So I try to think about that and, you know, do these little clippings out of a newspaper that felt kind of relevant to my theme. And you want to choose clippings that aren't going to be too recognizable. So like things that are like textural are really great. Things like photographs that you can kind of chop up are really great. I also like to cut out a lot of textural things. So here's like just a regular, you know, piece of paper that has like, that's printed some textural lines on it. So that can add kind of texture to the work. Here's like an order form that I thought of using because of kind of the lines on it. So I could use that for texture as well. So I wouldn't use all the words, but I would use kind of all these line areas. And then I got this like free envelope thing and I thought just having different values. So even if I do choose to print this in black and white, having a different value, this will turn into like a lighter medium gray. Having a different value would be good as well. And you can kind of tear the papers to create a lot of different textures and layers as well. Also, I printed out some of my drawings. So these are some drawings of butterflies that I did. And then these are printouts of kind of public domain images. So these are in the public domain, which means they have no copyright. And I got these off of the British Library's Flickr account. They have a whole account full of public domain images. And so I can kind of use these to layer with, cut up, and kind of transform in some way. And then I also, this is going to be a poetry zine, so I printed out some poetry as well that I'm going to use. So for the poetry, I am trying to go with some kind of theme. So you can see the theme that I'm going with is journey. And I also want to tell some kind of story with it. So I kept that in mind while I was choosing the different kinds of poetry. I'll talk more about that when we get to the actual making of the thing. But first, let's talk about how to fold your paper so that we can turn it into a zine. I highly recommend working on a practice one first. So I've just got this piece of newsprint here that I'm going to use to show you how to fold your papers. The actual paper that I'm going to use for the final zine is this really heavyweight watercolor paper. And because this is going to be the final thing, I want to kind of get an idea of what I want to do on like a practice thing. So this is just newsprint that I have that's going to be for practice. Okay, so for your practice sheet, you could use like printer paper, you could use newsprint, just any kind of scrap paper. You just want to figure out how are you going to fold this and kind of plan out the layout of this. So we're going to fold this in half. This is a really common way of making a small zine like this. You can find lots of directions about this on the internet as well. So you're going to fold your paper in half hot dog style, so lengthwise. And then you're going to fold it in half again, this way. Okay. And then you're going to fold that in half again one last time. Okay, and what you're creating in total are 8 boxes. So when I open this back up, you'll see 8 boxes total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so these are going to become your 8 pages. So then what you want to do to make this kind of a foldable and readable zine, you're actually going to cut a slit in the very center 2 boxes this way. Okay, so you can use your X-Acto knife for that to cut a slit lengthwise like that, or you could use a pair of scissors, whatever you have on hand. So I'm going to use my scissors here. So to cut it lengthwise this way, what you could do is fold it again, hamburger style, not lengthwise. And I'm just going to cut right in the middle here, not all the way across, because then you'll just be cutting your paper in half. I'm just cutting up to 1 box. Okay, so I've cut both the front and the back of this up to 1 box. And when you open it, you'll have this slit in the center. Okay, then before I show you how to fold this, let's write down the numbers of the pages that it's going to end up looking like. And it's crucial that you write this the correct direction. So we're going to start out with this bottom left corner here. This is going to be the back of your zine. Right next to that, this is going to be the cover of your zine. This one's going to be page 1. This one's going to be page 2. And then you have to flip it. We're going to go and flip this. It has to be flipped, okay, for it to look the right orientation. We're going to go page 3, page 4, page 5, and page 6. So essentially this is a 6-page zine. I know I said 8, but that was including the back and your cover. So your inside pages, you'll have 6 pages, and then you'll have a cover and you'll have a back of your zine. Okay, now we can fold this. We're going to fold it in half lengthwise again, okay, like hot dog style. And what you're going to do is you're going to pull the center of these out. So when you look at it from above, it looks like a cross. Okay, so you've got like a plus sign. Okay, and then you just have to kind of fold it in the way that you've numbered it. So if this is page 1 and then this is page 2, and you're saying this is the cover, that means this is the back, and you're just going to try to fold all of that down nice and neat. And what you'll end up with is, okay, this is the cover. This is page 1. This is page 2. This is page 3. This is page 4. This is page 5. This is page 6. And this is the back of your zine. And you've got basically a whole folded, you don't need staples. This is just a completely readable zine out of one piece of paper. Very convenient. This is great because once you're done with making your actual zine, you can fold it back out, and all you have to do is photocopy this whole sheet of paper, just this one sheet of paper. You can just photocopy that. You can go to your local print shop and just photocopy this as many times as you want, and you've got multiple copies of your zine that you can hand out to people. So then again, all you have to do is just cut that slit in the middle and fold it the way that it should be. Again, pulling out the middle, creating a little cross, and you've got this. But now you can see, because it's a little bit confusing of an organization, it's really great to make this practice one for you to plan what your layout is going to be for your zine. So then I've got this practice one that I've done already that shows kind of my layout of my zine. So you could see that I've thought about what is my cover going to look like. On the back, I want to make sure I include my socials, so where you can kind of find me online. And then I've planned out which poems are going to go on what page. And then yeah, so I've made kind of a plan on this practice sheet of paper so that when I go to my final, I have an idea of what I'm doing and how the layout's going to look. And I'm not kind of trying to figure that out on a whole, final piece of paper. I'm going to show you how to fold on the final sheet of paper. This is 140-pound watercolor paper. So you could use anything that's like at least kind of 60 pounds. That would be like a good kind of mixed media surface where you could do a little bit of watercolor on it. You could do ink, markers, and it won't bleed too much. And it'll withstand all the gluing that you're going to do. Okay, so for folding a heavy piece of paper like this, what I like to do is, you can see that I've already kind of started to do it. I try to make some kind of crease on the sides. So what I do is I take each corner and I make sure that these are lined up really well. So perfectly corner to corner. And I go across and I try to make a crease in this side here. I go to the other side and I do the same thing. I'm lining up corner to corner and making a crease there. And then what I can do is, now I can really fold this in half and try to, again, line up the corners really well. Really well, and grab a bone tool or any kind of hard shape tool. This is actually a clay sculpting tool, but a bone tool is shaped like this, and it's a really useful tool to help fold kind of heavy pieces of paper. So what I'm doing is using this hard kind of clay sculpting wood tool and making a crease right in the center, and then from the center I can kind of work my way out, up and down. Okay, so I'm using a kind of flat edge of it and working my way up and working my way down. This is going to ensure that you get the exact fold that you need and that you're not really damaging your paper in the process. You're getting a nice, good fold. If you don't have a bone tool, lots of other things you could use. You could use like a hard plastic ruler would do the same thing. It'll get you a nice, really sharp, clean fold. So I could use that. You could use, I don't know, maybe like a credit card. Anything like hard and flat, that's gonna work. Okay, so I've folded in half, and again, if I open it, it's got a really nice clean crease. It's not wavering in any way. It's a really nice clean flat crease, and my corners are lined up, and it's great. So I'm gonna do the same thing going in half this way. It might be easier, instead of folding, multiple pieces now that you've got a front and back and you're trying to fold you know, kind of twice the weight. It might be easier to just open it back up and fold it in half this way, because now it's kind of half the weight. So I'm gonna do the same thing that I was doing before, where I'm lining up corner to corner. I know this is getting like super detailed, but I just feel like these are things that, these are just really kind of fine tips, fine details, fine tips and tricks that maybe you might not have known about. I learned this in like a bookmaking class that I took in college. And just taking these extra steps makes a huge difference. So now I've got 4 boxes, and again, I need to fold it in half again, but I'm not going to fold it in half this way. It was much easier with the newsprint, but it's going to be harder with this thick paper, so I'm going to fold it in half by opening it up again. And I'm going to try to meet now from this corner to the center line as well as I can. And you want to make sure you're lined up as well as possible, because it's going to affect how your pages look. Well, it's great if you have origami experience. I grew up doing origami, so kind of more familiar with this process, so trying to make sure things are lined up really properly. It could be hard if you're not really used to this kind of process. All right, so then I have to cut this center 2 boxes. I'm going to use an X-Acto knife for that, and use a metal ruler for when you're working with X-Acto knives. So, you know, because the X-Acto knives are pretty sharp and could cut through your plastic rulers. And I'm going to create a cut within the center 2 boxes. Again, fold this in half, pull out the center, make a little cross, and then I've got my zine here. Okay, and so this is going to be the original. This is going to be my, you know, original one, where it's made out of this really thick paper, and it's kind of it's a little bit hard to, you know, turn the pages. It's really kind of way too thick of a paper for like a zine. But again, the original is where you're going to actually collage and layer a lot of things that can kind of bleed or not withstand with thinner paper. And when you go to kind of photocopy this and print multiple copies of this, you can use regular printer paper, and that's going to be a lot easier to fold like this newsprint was. So it's just the original that's going to be like this difficult, because you really want to make sure that your paper can withstand all this layering that you're going to do. Yeah, in this method, what happens is that, yes, you're going to have like this hole in the top, and then you're going to have this hole in the side, and like, you know, people that are new to zines might be a little bit confused, like, oh, am I supposed to like rip this page open and see like what's inside or something? But as long as you don't have anything too distracting in here, you know, people normally understand like, oh, okay, you go from page 1, you go to page 2, page 3. It's very natural to people how to read this. What I like to do is I like to suggest that people print on the other side as well. Maybe like just some kind of interesting pattern. So nothing with text, because again, if you do it in text, people are going to think, oh, am I supposed to read that as well? But it's just this like fun little extra that you can have, you know, like a whole pattern going on the other side. Like maybe it's just a bunch of little butterflies, or maybe you're drawing little flowers, or just some kind of, you know, pattern on the other side, so that it's just a little bit something extra. So that means that, you know, people can enjoy this zine multiple ways. They could figure out easily how to open this up and go and see this hidden image inside, or hidden pattern inside, or when it's folded up, the fact that you're kind of like seeing a little bit something in there could be really interesting. So that's just the nature of this fold. You can figure out ways to make these little inside pages a bit more entertaining to look at, but also understand that it's not part of the way you read this zine. But great question. If you cut those, let me illustrate that for you. So if you cut those, what happens is, if you were to cut that all the way through, bloop, now it's not stuck together anymore. So then what you could do is staple it. What you could do is go to one of the centers here. I don't know where you would go. You could maybe go here and kind of staple it so that it doesn't all fall apart. But yeah, it gets a little bit flimsy. It kind of falls apart if you cut any of the top lines. But you definitely could and use staples. It's just this is a method in which you wouldn't have to use staples. It's just like this one sheet, no staples necessary, super easy fold. So now we're going to go into the collaging part of this. So I've got my plan here. And I'm going to have this out with me so that I know which order that I'm collaging all of these things. Now, all of this, I didn't really plan how this stuff was going to look inside. So you can see that it's very blank. And even my cover, it's just a bunch of scribbles. I came with this with no real idea of how the inside was going to look, because I think collaging, it's a lot more, it's a lot less stressful and a lot more fun if you come at it with more spontaneity. So I highly recommend that you don't plan how things are going to look in the end, but you can do as much planning as possible in terms of, like, you know, the layout of your zine and kind of picking out ahead of time, you know, what kind of imagery you're going to have, but kind of trust the collaging process and be a little bit more spontaneous with how you layer these different pieces and how you organize all those different images. And then I'm going to basically cut up little pieces of my artwork and little pieces of all this stuff, and take some of my newspaper clippings and kind of do a lot of spontaneous layering. Paste this in underneath. You could use any kind of glue for this. Choose something that's acid-free. This is a glue stick from Japan, but I specifically chose something that said it was acid-free, and so it's going to be a lot more archival. It's not going to eat away at your paper. And you could choose to use, like, Mod Podge is also good kind of crafting glue that'll help things stick, or you could use like some kind of matte medium or something that you would use for acrylic paint. Those are really great for gluing things down as well. Okay, so I'm going to paste this in. Okay, and feel free to kind of overflow past, you know, your edges, because, you know, you can always cut that off later, and it's really nice to just, you know, go right up to the edges of this. So I'm not too worried about how this is going off the edge, because I can always cut that out later. And so maybe that's gonna go like this. I don't know, I'm not sold on that quite yet. I've got this newspaper clipping of, it's like these lights that were on top of a tunnel. So it was just this picture of this tunnel that they're building or something, and there's these lights. But I really liked how the lights look, and I really just like this kind of, this tunnel vision. I think I'm gonna use it upside down though, and make it seem more like it's this road or this pathway that's lit up with these lights. I kind of like that. Hopefully this gives you an idea of kind of how spontaneous I am with these collages. It's just, I gathered stuff, I'm gluing them down. Nothing is really set. Everything's very temporary. The way that this glue is, I think I could just easily peel it off. Some other glues like Mod Podge might be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more permanent, a little bit harder to peel off, so that's something to think about. And you can see I'm making really quick decisions. For one, because, you know, this is a demo and I don't want to take too much of your guys' time. But even if it wasn't a demo, I think I would try to work this quickly, because you want it to feel really spontaneous, and just you don't want to take too long making decisions. You want to just kind of go with the flow and how you're feeling. Okay, as long as you're transforming something enough, you can avoid copyright issues. So that's something to think about. I don't know, maybe it's going to be at the end of this road. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be, maybe I'm filling up some spaces. That's a great question. So again, before I sat down to do this, I thought about my themes, and I thought about my poems, and thinking about the imagery that comes to mind. And then, you know, I just looked through what I had. So I looked through newspapers that I got for free, and just clipped things out that felt, you know, relevant. You really want things to look kind of cohesive and have, you know, kind of a natural flow between the pages. So yes, it's great to have a lot of, you know, clippings and a lot of options of materials to choose from, but at the same time, when you have a lot of materials to kind of look through, you could have kind of, you know, decision-making paralysis. And you do run the risk of things not looking cohesive. So sometimes it's good to really limit your options. Again, I talked about using more textural stuff. Like, not everything has to be like plastered with imagery. It's good to have like textural stuff. So I've got this envelope I got for free. And when you tear it certain ways, you get a lot of like this kind of different texture, this torn paper kind of look. And so that's something that you can layer as well, just to add a little bit more interest, a little bit more texture. And again, don't worry about it overflowing at the bottom there. I can always cut that out. Oh, you know, zines come in so many different forms. So, you know, you could definitely do all kinds of things. You could draw your own stuff. Well, so like I said, I had like all these different materials that I forgot about. So thank you for that question. But yeah, so I can work on top of this as well. You know, maybe it's a matter of doing some extra lines that are on top of this to add texture. Maybe it's a matter of, you know, doing some pencil scribbles. Maybe you're drawing a whole thing off to the side here, you know, so you can definitely do a zine where you're kind of drawing the actual things inside, and it doesn't have to be like a whole collage thing. It could just be poems and your original artwork. That's why I told you to do a heavier weight paper, so that you could actually paint on top of this, you could draw on top of this, you could do all kinds of things on top of this. But yeah, zines come in so many different forms. I think collage feels like more of kind of how it started almost is collage stuff, because it was a lot of cutting things out, photocopying it, getting information out to as many hands as possible quickly. So just that cutting things out, pasting it together, that kind of homemade feel, quick and dirty homemade feel, I think harks back to how it started. But since then it's gone in so many different directions, where some people make zines completely digitally, where you know, you could just draw things digitally. So these butterflies were actually drawn digitally on a software like Adobe Photoshop, and so you could do a whole zine, you know, to the dimensions of you know, what you want to print. You could do it completely digitally and print that out. You know, you could definitely go many different forms with your zine. Great question. But yeah, collage is just one method that I wanted to show you today, and I feel like it goes well with poetry, just because it's also like a really quick way to get something down. For me, it's a really quick way. I feel like when I go to sit down and draw something, it takes me a lot longer to sit there and really plan a drawing, and that's just because I'm so used to working in that way. But with collage, for me, it's just very spontaneous and explorative, and it allows me to sit more in my emotions with the poetry. So for me, I think it's a great fit, but for you it might not be, and definitely do whatever feels like most natural for you. So hopefully this gives you an idea of, you know, how very spontaneous I work on collages. It's very kind of all over the place. You can see how messy things are getting here. And yeah, just kind of approach it with a feeling of more openness, kind of really sit down and feel the work that you're trying to embody. So you know, you're reading the poems again, you're thinking about the feelings that you're getting from reading the poems and the imagery that you're getting from that, and, you know, working while you're thinking about those things.